let's get into what's going on with the Congressional Office of Ethics, or the Office of Congressional Ethics. You'll recall back in 2008, the Democrats took both houses. They got into the House in 2006, largely because of ethics scandals that the House in no way was set up to handle. I'm talking about the Abramoff scandal. I'm talking about the Mark Foley scandal. And the problem is that the Congressional Ethics Committee, basically, they had created some type of truce where partisans were using it to attack each other, according to them. And so they basically said, like, well, let's just not do any congressional ethics. And that way, we can take care of the problem. And so in 2008, the Democrats created, and the way they create this, and the reason why there was a vote last night before there's even a new House, and why you don't need Democrats to vote for this, is that the Republicans last night, amongst their own caucus, voted to scrap the outside independent agency that the Democrats had set up. They vote on it to include it in the rules package, which then gets passed by the Republicans. And so basically what you had was this Office of Congressional Ethics. And it was an independent body that investigates bad behavior by members of Congress. It allowed other people to report them without it becoming a tit-for-tat situation. It obviously had the ability, if there was any law breaking, to tell police. But basically, it didn't judge and hand out punishment. It simply referred reports. It basically was an investigative body, and it referred reports to the House Ethics Committee. Sometimes what they did is they investigated things and said, this is not a valid claim. And now the Republicans have voted to get rid of it. Well, they're not getting rid of it. They're just not making it independent anymore. And they're not allowing it to provide, to send potential criminal matters to the police or provide any evaluation on it. They now have barred anonymous complaints. So if you're a staffer and you've been sexually assaulted by a congressperson, you can't do it anonymously. It prevents the release of materials to the public in the event that the ethics committee decides, like, hey, we don't need to pursue any of this. Now, supposedly, they have now backed down because of how bad this looked. And Ryan and McConnell, or I should say Ryan and his whip, McCarthy, or I should say the leader of the House now, he used to be the whip, want them to back out, but they haven't actually. Here is Representative Marsha Blackburn this morning claiming the gutting of this independent ethics watchdog was actually making it better.
What's your response to when they say, how does this drain the swamp?
What it will do is provide more transparency. Anytime you can provide more accountability and more transparency to any process that is in place, then you're going to take another step toward draining the swamp. And I am all for draining the swamp. I think that anyone who knows me knows that. I've spent much of my career working on reducing the size, the scope, and the cost of the federal government,
Sure.
and in its place putting accountability and transparency.
Sure. And so you understand, as a champion of transparency, why a vote that happens with only Republicans at night, behind closed doors, gives the impression of something sneaky happening.
Most people would say 5 o'clock in the afternoon is not at night, but you know, we could discuss that. It does start getting dark outside.
Well, you know,
behind,
you get the point, right? Behind closed doors, not open for debate.
That's right.
It sounds as though maybe something is being hidden.
The Democrats have their meeting behind closed doors also, and on Wednesday, when the president comes to talk to them about how to fight against the repeal of Obamacare, they're going to do that one behind closed doors. And, you know, it is, the conferences meet together in a room, and that is where they have their conference meetings. And each conference does that, and it is bipartisan and it is bicameral.
Okay.
Wait, what?
Do you feel comfortable?
All right. Wow. So there she is. Marsha Blackburn addressing this. It's more transparent and more accountable. Now, let me just give you, here's just a little tip for that journalist. The next question would be, how so? Yeah. Right. Not, but you were behind closed doors. I mean, this is the problem, is that, you know, it's not going to be sufficient to have journalists do the interviewing if they don't know at all what they're talking about. That's why you go to this notion of behind closed doors, and that it's at night, to the point where you're arguing about when the sun goes down and literally what's happening with the door. It doesn't matter if they did it behind closed doors or if the door was open, or maybe they had French doors, or maybe it's a sliding door. No, the issue is, how does this possibly make it more accountable or transparent? So supposedly, following this morning, and apparently Marsha Blackburn hadn't gotten the memo yet, Paul Ryan, they amended these rules. And it is no longer, supposedly the office will continue to operate independently. This is according to Paul Ryan's statement. But it will now be, instead of folded into the Ethics Committee, it's going to be overseen by the Ethics Committee. In other words, it will operate independently after we stack it with people who we know will not operate it independently.
That sounds like a much more Ryan sort of solution.
Yes.
It's a little more elegant.
Indeed. And here is one of the sort of the Trump/Republican dilemmas that I think we still have yet to figure out as to how to handle. So Trump this morning tweets out bad timing, essentially. With all that Congress has to work on, do they really have to make the weakening of the independent ethics watchdog, as unfair as it may be, their number one act and priority? So here's Trump basically saying this shouldn't be the first thing that they do. Now, of course, it literally has to be, because they want to change the rules. And so it has to be. But the question here is, do you say that even Trump thought this was a mistake, and then run the risk of Paul Ryan just changing the verbiage and then Trump giving it his blessing? I mean, do you use Trump as a cudgel or as leverage?
Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Subscribe.